In the western edge of California's Central Valley, long before sunrise, a line of autonomous tractors begins moving across a lettuce field without a driver in sight. Their headlights cut through the fog, drifting off irrigation canals built generations ago during the New Deal era. Above them, small drones move in precise geometric patterns, mapping moisture levels row by row. Sensors buried in the soil send data every few minutes to cloud servers hundreds of miles away. By the time the first human workers arrive, algorithms have already decided how much water each section of the farm will receive, which plants show signs of disease, and which acres may not survive the season at all. From the outside, it can look like the arrival of a cleaner, smarter agricultural future. California has always sold that image well: innovation, efficiency, reinvention. Yet beneath the polished language of agricultural technology conferences and venture capital presentations is a more complicated reality taking shape across rural America. Water is disappearing faster than reservoirs can recover. Farm labor is becoming harder to secure. Extreme heat is changing growing cycles that remained stable for decades. At the same time, some of the largest technology companies and investors in the world are quietly moving into agriculture, treating farmland less like inherited soil and more like a programmable system. And nowhere has that transformation become more visible than California. For more than a century, California agriculture depended on a fragile illusion that human engineering could permanently overcome geography. The state receives less rainfall than many people imagine. Much of its farmland exists in semi-arid terrain that naturally could not support industrial-scale farming without massive intervention. What changed everything was infrastructure. Beginning in the early 20th century, dams, aqueducts, and irrigation canals redirected water across hundreds of miles, allowing the Central Valley to become one of the most productive agricultural regions on Earth. By the post-war years, California was producing enormous quantities of almonds, lettuce, tomatoes, grapes, strawberries, pistachios, citrus, and dairy. Entire towns grew around harvest cycles. Migrant labor became embedded in the economic structure of the state, so did dependence on groundwater. During drought years, farms simply drilled deeper. For decades, that system appeared sustainable enough to continue. Then the climate began shifting faster than the infrastructure could adapt. The droughts of the 2010s forced a reckoning that many farmers had quietly feared for years. Reservoir levels collapsed. Snowpack in the Sierra Nevada became increasingly unreliable. Wells that had operated for generations suddenly ran dry. Smaller family farms struggled to survive, while large agricultural corporations expanded deeper into precision farming technologies designed to reduce waste and increase predictability. That pressure created the perfect conditions for Silicon Valley to enter agriculture in a serious way. At first, the relationship seemed unlikely. Software engineers and venture capital firms were not traditionally associated with farming communities, but agriculture presented exactly the kind of problem the technology industry likes to solve: massive inefficiencies spread across enormous datasets, water usage, soil chemistry, labor logistics, pest detection, yield forecasting, crop pricing, insurance modeling, satellite imaging. In technology circles, farming increasingly became viewed as an information problem. The result was a wave of investment that transformed parts of California agriculture into one of the most technologically advanced farming systems in the world. Today, some farms in the Central Valley operate with machine learning systems that monitor individual plants. Tractors steer themselves using GPS coordinates accurate within inches. AI-powered cameras scan, produce moving along conveyor belts at speeds impossible for human inspection. Robotic harvesters are being trained to identify ripeness through computer vision, adjusting pressure in real time to avoid bruising fruit. In strawberry fields near Watsonville, autonomous machines crawl slowly through rows, while cameras inspect leaves for early signs of fungal infection invisible to the human eye. In vineyards across Napa and Sonoma, drones map vine stress patterns using multispectral imaging that reveals changes in plant health days before visible discoloration appears. Almond growers in the San Joaquin Valley now use predictive software to determine exactly when irrigation will maximize yield while minimizing water loss. The technology is impressive, sometimes genuinely revolutionary. But the deeper story is not really about machines replacing farm tools. It is about systems replacing instinct. For generations, farming knowledge in California often passed through experience. Growers understood subtle weather patterns, soil behavior, seasonal timing, and local ecological changes through observation accumulated over decades. AI agriculture changes the source of authority. Increasingly, decisions come from predictive models trained on massive quantities of historical and real-time data. That shift carries consequences beyond efficiency. A farmer who once relied primarily on inherited knowledge may now depend on subscription software, satellite services, proprietary analytics platforms, and equipment ecosystems controlled by multinational corporations. Data itself becomes infrastructure, and whoever controls the data gains extraordinary influence over the future of farming. Some farmers welcome that transition, others see danger in it. In Fresno County, one grower described modern farming as running a tech company that also grows almonds. The statement was not entirely sarcastic. Many large operations now employ software specialists alongside irrigation managers and equipment mechanics. Farm offices increasingly resemble logistics centers filled with live dashboards, predictive charts, and remote monitoring systems. The economics driving this transformation are relentless. California agriculture operates under enormous pressure. Land prices remain extremely high. Water access is uncertain. Labor shortages have intensified as immigration patterns shift, and younger workers leave agricultural regions for urban economies. At the same time, supermarkets demand visual perfection and year-round consistency. A missed harvest window or pest outbreak can destroy millions of dollars in revenue. AI promises control in an industry built around uncertainty. That promise explains why investment has accelerated so quickly. Companies developing agricultural robotics have received billions in funding over the last decade. Autonomous weeding systems now use computer vision to distinguish crops from weeds, reducing herbicide use while lowering labor costs. Some machines can remove weeds mechanically with remarkable precision, plant by plant, across thousands of acres. Inside massive tomato processing facilities in the Central Valley, machine learning systems sort produce at extraordinary speed, rejecting damaged crops through imaging systems trained on millions of examples. Dairy farms increasingly use biometric monitoring devices attached to cattle, tracking movement, feeding behavior, and health indicators continuously. Algorithms predict illness before symptoms become obvious. Supporters argue that these technologies may be essential for survival. California's agricultural system faces mounting environmental constraints that traditional methods alone may not solve. Water conservation is no longer optional. Extreme weather events are becoming more common. Heat waves are damaging crops that evolved around older climate assumptions. Precision agriculture can reduce resource consumption significantly in some cases. Yet the benefits are unevenly distributed. Large agribusinesses can absorb the cost of advanced systems more easily than smaller independent farms. Autonomous machinery, AI analytics subscriptions, drone mapping services, and sensor networks require major capital investment. That raises concerns about consolidation. As agriculture becomes more technologically intensive, smaller farms risk falling further behind or being pushed out entirely. There is also the question nobody in the technology industry likes discussing publicly for very long: labor. California agriculture has depended for generations on migrant workers performing physically demanding labor under difficult conditions. AI companies often describe automation as a solution to labor shortages, and in many cases that is partially true. But automation also changes the economic structure of rural communities built around seasonal agricultural work. The transition is already visible in certain sectors. Automated harvest systems are reducing demand for some forms of manual labor. Robotic packing and sorting systems are reshaping warehouse employment. Autonomous tractors reduce staffing requirements during planting and cultivation. Even where workers remain essential, surveillance technologies increasingly track productivity in granular detail. For labor advocates, the concern is not simply job loss, it is power. When every movement can be monitored, measured, and optimized by software, agricultural labor becomes increasingly quantified. Productivity targets once enforced by supervisors are now embedded into digital systems. In some facilities, workers compete indirectly against machine efficiency metrics that continuously rise. At the same time, many farmworkers themselves express mixed feelings about automation. Some view advanced machinery as a relief from dangerous physical labor performed under extreme heat conditions. California's rising temperatures have made agricultural work more hazardous each year. Others worry that technological change will gradually erase economic opportunities that entire communities depend upon. Both fears can exist simultaneously. Meanwhile, investors continue pouring money into what they believe may become one of the defining industries of the coming decades: climate-adaptive agriculture. That phrase appears constantly now in agricultural conferences and technology forums. Climate-adaptive, resilient farming, sustainable optimization. Behind the terminology is a recognition that the old agricultural model may no longer function reliably under modern environmental conditions. California sits directly at the center of that experiment. In some regions, farmers are abandoning water-intensive crops entirely. Others are transitioning toward drought-resistant varieties supported by AI forecasting tools. Satellite monitoring now tracks evapotranspiration rates across entire farming districts. Machine learning models attempt to predict water demand months in advance. Insurance companies increasingly rely on agricultural data analytics to evaluate risk exposure. Agriculture is becoming inseparable from computational forecasting. Yet despite all the technological sophistication, nature continues asserting itself in ways algorithms cannot fully control. Wildfires disrupt logistics routes and contaminate crops with smoke exposure. Unexpected atmospheric river events flood fields after years of drought preparation. Pest migrations shift with warming temperatures. Global supply chain disruptions alter fertilizer availability and export pricing overnight. Markets remain volatile. Weather remains imperfectly predictable. The mythology surrounding artificial intelligence often suggests total optimization is just around the corner. Agriculture exposes the limits of that belief very quickly. Farming has always involved uncertainty because biology itself is uncertain. Even the most advanced systems still operate within ecological realities no software can fully eliminate. And perhaps that is what makes California's smart farms so revealing. They are not simply futuristic showcases of technological progress. They are stress responses to a much deeper instability unfolding beneath modern agriculture itself. Water scarcity, climate volatility, economic concentration, labor transformation, land pressure, global food demand. The machines moving silently through California fields at night are not arriving because agriculture became easier. They are arriving because it became harder. And in many ways, the future of food production may depend on whether these systems can genuinely adapt faster than the conditions reshaping the land beneath them.